presents to you Honest Talk.
Hi folks, today we are back with one more great and leading personality, Madam Anima Patil Sabale. Anima Patil Sabale is an Indian-born software and aerospace engineer. She's currently working as Orion Spacecraft Simulations Lab Manager at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston. She's a Scientist-Astronaut Candidate for commercial spaceflight research projects during her off-work hours. Patil Sabale has been involved in a number of simulated missions. In 2014, she was selected for a 4-month simulated Mars mission in Hawaii, but she could not attend. In 2015, she was the commander for NASA's HERA, Human Exploration and Research Analog, HERA, 7 at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, a 14-day analog mission to an asteroid Geographos. Patil Sabale graduated from the PoSSUM, Polar Suborbital Science in the Upper Mesosphere, Scientist-Astronaut program in 2016. In 2017, Patil Sabale became a Citizen Scientist-Astronaut Candidate for the PHEnOM, Physiological, Health, and Environmental Observations in Microgravity project. In 2018, she was the crew commander of Crew 193 at the Mars Desert Research Station in Utah. She is furthermore a first-year support engineer for HI-SEAS, a Mars analog mission on Hawaii. She has participated in research missions. She flew 56 parabolas till now on a Falcon 20 aircraft wearing a spacesuit to test its performance. She spun in centrifuge and pulled 6 Gs as a part of a research study. She was in 6-inch head-down tilt position for 8 hours on 2 separate days for NASA's simulated microgravity fluid loading study. So, let's begin our talk with our today's guest, Madam Anima Patil Sabale.
So first of all, ma'am, I welcome you to in this session. Thank you so much for joining and agreeing to share your thoughts with us. We are extremely very happy to have you for today's talk.
Thank you for having me and thank you for inviting. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It's our pleasure too. So moving to the topic of today's session, which we have chosen is what it takes to be an astronaut. I think you are the best person to answer all those queries regarding this topic. Ma'am, before I jump to this topic, ma'am, my first question to you is that please explain in simple words who are the astronauts and what they do.
Okay. So astronauts basically are space travelers, right? It comes from a Greek word, star traveler. So that's what astronauts are. But basically, from what we have had astronauts actually do so far, we've had astronauts go to the moon, land on the moon, explore the moon, and then we have astronauts today. Every single day, we have at least 6 astronauts up there at least 3 astronauts and maximum of 9 astronauts on the International Space Station that is orbiting our planet constantly. It's a huge lab, a football stadium sized lab that's orbiting the Earth, right? So that's where astronauts live and work. So astronauts are basically people from different backgrounds. There are engineers, there are doctors, there are physicists, there are geologists even. We have people from different backgrounds and military folks as well, test pilots. Most of them are military folks as well. So they are all from different backgrounds that are selected by NASA. I'm talking about NASA astronauts specifically right now. But yeah, NASA selects them to be NASA astronauts, and they're trained for 2 years. They're trained to live and work in space on the International Space Station right now. And then we are traveling to Moon next. In 2024, our goal is to land the first woman and the next man on the moon, right? As a part of the Apollo missions, we've landed men on moon already. But after all these years now, we're going back to the moon because moon is going to be our test bed to test out all our technologies so that we can go to Mars eventually. And that's what our astronauts will be doing. They'll be going to moon. They'll be testing out all our technologies for us. They'll be exploring the moon. That's called doing science. They'll be doing a lot of science, collecting samples, understanding things on the moon. How the moon is an example of billions of years ago, what happened in our solar system, right? And then eventually we'll go to Mars. Can we live and survive on another planet? It's not like Earth at all. It's totally inhabitable. Can we have humans live and survive on such a planet? That's what we are going to find out next. So astronauts are basically scientists, researchers, doctors, engineers, and people from all these different pilots. I shouldn't forget pilots because they're the ones who fly the spacecraft. So they're people from different backgrounds who are trained by NASA. And what NASA does is Each astronaut that's hired is trained in a lot of different areas. If they are from the engineering background, they're given the training in medical as well. So basically NASA trains them in various aspects, so anyone can do any job when they're up in their space. They have to be engineers, doctors, plumbers even. If something breaks with their toilet, who is going to fix that? They will have to fix it. They'll have to be cooks in the future, because when we go to Mars, they might have to start cooking for themselves. So yeah, they have to wear different hats, and that's what they're trained for. So that's what an astronaut is in a nutshell. It's not a nutshell, but that's what astronaut is in as few words as possible that I can describe. If you look at India's astronauts now, right? ISRO is going to launch Gagannauts soon. And 4 astronauts they've selected are all test pilots from the Indian Air Force. The first time every space organization selects astronauts, they're always test pilots. Why? Because we want them to be able to fly the new spacecraft. The spacecraft that India is going to fly is going to be completely new. No one has flown it. No one has tested it. So who can fly them most effectively? Can people like you and me who are just civilians, can they fly? Even though I am like a student pilot right now and I can fly at planes, but being a test pilot gives you a different advantage. They have flown different aircrafts, right? So they are the right people. They know how to handle that stress, the G forces that come on when you're flying a new spacecraft, and what kind of actions to take if something goes wrong. So Indian Air Force has selected 4 test pilots as astronauts. So you see, astronauts are basically people with a lot of different skills, a lot of different qualifications, who are willing to put their lives at risk, because it's a riskiest job here on planet Earth today, and who are willing to do that for science and technology, and so that we learn new things. That's a long answer to a short question.
All right, ma'am. It was really a very insightful answer from your side, and I think the viewers, those who are watching this session, it will be beneficial for them as well. Ma'am, my next question to you is, what type of studies do they make on space?
Oh no, are you still there? Okay, I thought I lost you there for a second. There was no, yeah, I couldn't hear you. So your question is, what kind of studies are performed on the space station, right? Or in space right now? So yes, there are a lot of different kind of studies. That's a good question. We want to understand a lot of things. So first thing we do is a lot of science on space. Basically, now we want to grow plants when we go to Mars, right? How will plants grow in space where there's no gravity? So on the space station, we're growing plants right now. There's a system called the veggie system, in which we're growing plants. We're going to even have a greenhouse connected to the space station soon, sometime soon in the future, where we'll be growing plants. So that's one kind of science we do. Then there are a lot of other tasks that happen also. I'm trying to think. Technologies that we need to test in microgravity. There are some technologies that we cannot test out on the surface of Earth, or some science that we cannot perform here on Earth, which we can perform in zero gravity. But there have been benefits from that research, that science, those studies that we do on the space station, that have been beneficial to things here on Earth. In the medical field as well, we've grown tissues and cells that we haven't been able to work on here on the surface of Earth to treat different kind of diseases. So if you look at spinoff.nasa.gov, it's a website, spinoff.nasa.gov, that lists and gives details of all the technologies that humanity has benefited from, all the research that NASA has done in space. So yes, there's a lot of different kind of studies. If you also look at NASA's website, every mission, what are the tests we're going to perform, that's listed in brief, that these are the kind of studies we'll be doing. I'm trying to think of something specific. Even one study I can think of right away is how will we handle fire in space? So we've tried to study that also, because fire is going to behave differently in zero gravity, right? Here on Earth, the way it behaves is quite different, but in space it's different. So there was a spacecraft called the Cygnus, which was a spacecraft of a company called the Sciences, and that was a cargo spacecraft. So it took all of this cargo up there to the space station, supplies for the astronauts, basically food, clothing. So these ships carry all of those kind of supplies for the astronauts. When it comes back, it burns up in the Earth's atmosphere, right? So we decided we're going to perform an experiment, a fire experiment on it while it's coming back, because it's going to burn off anyways. And so we did that. This was 2 or 3 years ago. If you look up Cygnus spacecraft fire experiment, you'll find out information about that. So these are the kind of experiments we perform on the spacecraft. Recently, we launched SpaceX, which is a commercial company, right? It has a contract with NASA right now. So we launched the first test flight of SpaceX, Demo 1. It was called Demo 1, where 2 NASA astronauts, Bob and Doug, they launched to the space station on SpaceX's Dragon, first ever commercial spacecraft launching to the space station, and it docked successfully with the space station. They stayed on there for some time, and then they came back in that. So that was a successful test flight. So that is also a kind of study, you can say. And now SpaceX is going to start flying regularly because that flight was successful. So in November, first week of November, we'll be flying NASA's astronauts on its first actual flight, which is not a test flight. So these are also some kind of studies. Plus, on the outer side of the International Space Station, we have several equipments that are attached, that are working on different kinds of experiments, understanding the cosmic and intergalactic radiation. Here inside the sun's solar system, we are protected by the heliosphere. The plasma rays from the sun, they create a kind of a protective surface or a sphere around the solar system that protects us from the intergalactic radiation. But even then, we want to understand what other kind of radiation, ionizing, non-ionizing radiation can affect us, and how even the physics experiments, astrophysics, those kind of experiments are attached on the outside of the space station as well. And astronauts are doing spacewalks regularly to perform maintenance on the space station. That is also a part of their jobs, right? So when you see astronauts in their white suits outside the space station, they are performing spacewalks to replace different parts on the space station or fix part of the maintenance of the space station, because we have to maintain it. It's been functioning there for 20 years already now, and it's our home up there in space. So yeah.
All right, ma'am. Again, it was really a very wonderful answer from your side, and I think you have very clearly explained it in very simple words. And the viewers, those who are watching this session, of course, they will understand what actually astronaut, what type of studies they do. Ma'am, my next question to you, because as a civilian, we are always curious about the things like that. Whenever anyone go out of our Earth, how actually does it feel? Ma'am, my next question to you is, how it feels different than it does here on Earth? How they are prepared for that?
Okay, so see, in outer space, there is no gravity. First thing, right? We know. Here on Earth, we have the gravitational force, and that is how we are connected to the Earth. So when you're in zero gravity, there is nothing to hold you down, so you're floating basically. And then what happens is, you're not only floating, it's a different experience, but there are a lot of things happening in your body. You're disoriented because there is no gravity. Here on Earth, because we have gravity, we know we have a sense of direction. That is up and this is down, right? We know that. But in space, you lose that sense of direction because there is no gravity and you're floating around. So there is no up or down. And then what's happening is we're using our legs here on Earth to walk, right? Every step we take, we're using our legs. Look at the body. The biggest bone and muscle in our body is our leg, because it has to work against gravity. In space, there is no gravity, so there is no use for the legs. So what starts happening is, when there is no gravity and when you are not using a certain body part, you start losing bone and muscle. So it's called bone and muscle atrophy. So to counter that, so that the astronauts do not lose a lot of bone and muscle, actually they have lost quite a lot in just 6 months of living on the space station, when we plan to go to the moon and Mars and live there for longer durations, how will our body react then to that absence of gravity like the Earth? And that's why astronauts, we need to understand that. And those are the kind of studies we are doing as well on the space station. That leads me to the previous question's answer also. So how the space environment affects the human body, that is also a part of studies. It affects their vision also. Astronauts get blind to a certain extent, because what happens is, in the absence of gravity, all the fluids in our body, right? There is 75% fluids in our body, right? All those fluids, they're rushing up to your brain. There is nothing to hold them down. Here on Earth, gravity is what's holding everything. It's allowing it to circulate in our body. But in zero gravity, there's nothing to hold it down. So everything rushes up to your head, and so their faces become puffy. The fluids are causing pressure on their eyes, which is called intracranial pressure. That squishes their eyeballs, and so they lose some amount of vision up to a certain extent. When they come back on Earth, their bodies adapt and they might get all the vision back, but it never happens that they'll get their vision back completely. That's what I've read, that they lose a certain amount of vision anyways. So that's another side effect, a big side effect, right? Plus, you are living in the absence of atmosphere. Here on Earth, we are protected by our atmosphere, right? We take it for granted. We take gravity, atmosphere, everything for granted. But these are really precious things. In the absence of atmosphere, what happens is all the radiation, the ionizing radiation from the sun, the solar radiation, and then, like I said, cosmic and intergalactic radiation, which is the radiation from other stars and objects in the space, that is affecting our body. It's bombarding our skin, our body. And so your chances of getting cancer increase when you're in space and you're not protected from that radiation. So it's all harmful environment. The space is out to kill you, basically. It wants to terminate you, humans. Even on Mars and Moon, when we're planning to go there, right? But there's no atmosphere. Mars has just 1% of Earth's atmosphere, and that too is made up of 95% carbon dioxide. So it's all toxic for us. So all the space environment is really harsh, really extreme. Our human body is not designed to live and survive in that kind of an environment, but we still are trying to do that. And for that, we are trying to understand what we can do to protect our astronauts when we send them into outer space. So in space, what you feel is, you don't feel the extreme radiation, right? It happens over a long period of time. When you come back, when astronauts have come back, they have still felt the effects of radiation. Astronaut Scott Kelly, he was on the space station for 1 whole year. And when he came back, he told us when we were talking to him, his skin is so sensitive, even after 2 to 3 months of coming back, that when he touches it, he feels a burning sensation and it turns slightly red. That's how radiation has affected his body. But in space, the most fun thing is zero gravity. Astronauts have said they enjoy being in zero gravity. They get to float. They don't have to walk. And if they want to just get from one part to another, they just float their way around, which is fun. I got to experience zero gravity when I participated in microgravity flights here on Earth, which are parabolic flights, basically. There are airplanes that have been emptied out from inside. They're modified airplanes for experiments in zero gravity. We want to understand how certain things will work before we send them up in space. So we fly parabolic flights. So these airplanes, they fly parabolas, which is an upside down U shape, right? We've learned about that in geometry, the shape of parabola. So the airplane starts flying vertically like this. So you're pulling a lot of G forces. Like I've pulled up to 3 Gs when I'm inside an airplane, and I've been in a spacesuit to test the performance of that spacesuit as a Scientist-Astronaut Candidate for Project PoSSUM when I flew this flight. So you're flying on the side of the parabola in the airplane. You're pulling a lot of Gs. When you pull Gs, you get nauseous. You start feeling dizzy. Some people might throw up even. So fortunately, my body has handled Gs pretty well, and I haven't reached that scenario. And then the airplane becomes horizontal, right? When it becomes horizontal, after having been like this for a certain amount of time, when it becomes horizontal, you start floating. That's when you get zero gravity for a few seconds, like 22 to 23 seconds, you're floating. then it dives down again on the other side of the parabola. When it dives down again, you're pulling a lot of G's. And again, you're getting nauseous. And again, you're going to start getting dizzy and lose focus. But we are trained for that. And that's how we can handle. And even after training, some people's bodies just react totally differently than other people's bodies. They will still start getting nauseous and they will still start throwing up. So we are prepared for that, to handle that kind of situation as well. So yeah, being in space is not all fun. It's a fun experience, but yes, you need to give your body time to adapt. Astronauts, when they launch to the space station for 2 days, because they are disoriented, they cannot perform. They are also nauseous because of the disorientation, right? They cannot eat a lot. Some astronauts don't want to eat because they feel nauseous for those 2 days. But then after 2 days, our body adapts, and so they can then start eating and performing all their tasks. So they are given those 2 days of not much workload, so their bodies can adapt. Yeah, but like I said, we're trained, and once you're trained, then you can handle it in a better way.
It's really great to listen to all these things from you, and I think that today we got the privilege. It's a kind of privilege that today we are listening all these things from you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
My next question to you, which basically comes as a common question from civilian. The question is, ma'am, how is the food like on space?
So the food, see, it has to have a longer shelf life, right? Because it's going to be up there. We cannot send them food, or they cannot cook any fresh food there. Right now, astronauts eat the dehydrated foods mostly. All the water is taken out, so it doesn't go bad, right? It has a longer shelf life that way. And then it's dehydrated, and then when it's time for them to eat, then they hydrate it. There are syringes, big syringes, the ones with which we get shots. There are bigger versions of those syringes, and you can measure how much water you need to put in there. There are some food items in which you need hot water. There are some in which you need cold water. So you take that much of the food water and you inject that into that food pack. And then you eat. But there are also some warmers where, like microwaves, there are small equipments where you put in your food packets and they get warmed, so you can heat them and eat them also. Some are really pre-made, pre-packaged, and they're just all you need to do is warm them. When I was on the HERA mission, Human Exploration and Research Analog, we got to eat the same food that astronauts eat on the space station. And I could share, but I don't know if it will take up a lot of your time. There are pictures of it on my public page. So there is a picture of those food packets on my public page. You can
paste the link on description box, and the viewers can.
You can, yeah, I'll share the link of that album with you. You can check that in there. But yeah, that's the kind of food astronauts eat today. And then there are crews from different countries. Like we have US astronauts, we have astronauts from the European Space Agency who are from Europe. There are Russian astronauts, there are Japanese astronauts. So everyone has their own food. And so I've heard that astronauts like to trade their food because they like some of our foods and we like some of their foods. So it's a fun international group of astronauts who are working together and enjoying their meals together also. But yeah, we've seen pictures of astronauts making tortillas, and they're putting in all their ingredients. They're flying around them. They're just putting it right. So it's like a fun environment also for them to make their put their food together. So now we get to send them fresh fruits also. They get fresh fruits, and we've had instances where we've sent ice creams to them also when we've launched spacecrafts to the space station. So, but these are the kind of foods. Right now we send them pre-packaged food from here on the surface of Earth. I can compare it slightly with what we eat on flights when we're traveling international flights, right? It is that kind of flavor, or slightly different, but somewhat similar to that. But bottom line is, what I feel the similarity is, we lose the sense of smell and taste when we are in zero gravity. Like I said, all the body fluids are rushing up, and so you lose that. And so you cannot taste the food a lot. So astronauts are known to not eating enough because they don't taste the food. So they are also given a choice to bring their own spices. So astronauts take their own personal spices that they like to spice up their food, because spice is only taste that you can really feel in that kind of an environment. It's like when you get a cold, you don't feel that taste or smell, right? That's what happens basically when you're up in space. Everything is clogged here. And that's why spices help them a lot. So they like spicy foods up there. Indian food is a good choice for spicy food.
All right, ma'am. Ma'am, my next question to you, I have a question from one of my subscriber. The question is that how to become an astronaut and how does the recruitment actually happen?
So every country has a different space program. Okay, let's start with that. Like I said, India just started its space program, so India has been hiring test pilots. But I will talk about NASA program because this is the most mature NASA and Russian space program, I think, which has come a long way from when we started to launch astronauts to the moon. When we launched astronauts to the moon as a part of the Apollo missions, they were all test pilots. But since then, now we have astronauts from civilian background also, right? People like me who are not from the military background. Even today, NASA's 50%, every time NASA hires a group of astronauts, 50 to 60% are from the military background. They are test pilots from the Air Force, Navy, but even then they have a lot of educational qualifications. So the basic requirement now, NASA has changed its basic educational requirement. Until now, it was bachelor's in a science, technology, engineering, math, one of those fields, bachelor's in STEM. But since this year, in March, after 4 years, NASA opened its astronaut application. And I've been one of the applicants as well. So the requirement is you need to have at least a master's in science, in one of the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics field. And they have a list of the degrees that they accept and list of degrees that they don't accept. So that's the first criteria. First criteria actually is you need to be a US citizen. So you need to be a citizen of the country to whose space program you are applying to, right? Which makes sense because aerospace and defense is a sensitive area for each nation. And so they have that citizenship criteria to work in those organizations. So first thing is you need to be a US citizen. Second thing is you need to have a master's in one of the STEM degrees. But trust me, one master's is not enough. I've seen a lot of people, even I have 3 masters. A lot of people have a lot of master's degrees, and then there are a lot of PhD folks who have PhD degrees. So the more your education, basically, the better your chances. And then after that, then you need to have a lot of other skills. Like I said, an astronaut has to wear many hats when they're up in space. So the more skills you have, the better your chances. Flying is a good skill to have, being a pilot. Scuba certification is a good skill to have because it shows NASA you are ready to put yourself in a challenging environment and work in that environment. And astronauts train here in the neutral buoyancy lab, which is a 40 feet deep swimming pool in which there is a mock-up of the International Space Station. Astronauts dress up in their spacesuits and they dive into the water and they work on the mock-up. They train for their spacewalks in that neutral buoyancy lab. Why? Because that's one of the closest environment which is similar to zero gravity. That is why we train astronauts in the pool for their spacewalks. So diving helps for that. And then there are a lot of other skills you can have. How adventurous are you? NASA wants to see that. How physically fit? Physical fitness is a big criteria too, right? So you have to be physically fit also. So yeah, these are all the requirements to be an astronaut, I would say. What was the other part of your question? What does it require to be an astronaut? And there was something else also you asked, right?
What qualities they need?
I think a positive approach, a down-to-earth approach is really important. I get a lot of rude questions from students, and when I don't reply to them instantly, they become really offended, and then they'll start pinging me weird messages. And then I say, hey, you want to become an astronaut, learn to be patient, learn some humility, learn to be down to earth, right? Grounded. Being grounded is really important because when you go to space, you are going to be in an environment where you're away from your loved ones. You're going to be with a group of people who are not your family, and you have to work with them. So to get along, you cannot have that attitude You cannot have an attitude, basically. You have to be really humble and down to earth. And that's what we need to learn. Yeah, I try to get back to everyone's questions as and when possible. But even I have a family, I have a full-time job, and I'm doing all these other things. So it takes time. And some questions are really repetitive. So then I try to send them to my page, my website, where I have answers to those questions. But yes, these are the traits to have. Humility, and being grateful for how far you've come, and learning from them, being open to learning from everyone, right? Those are good things to have, and a positive approach, a positive attitude. It helps you in the long run.
Indeed, ma'am. As you have mentioned, the person should be down to earth. I think these are the qualities which required in every field. If you look into any field,
yeah, exactly.
So, ma'am, I think you have told us so many things, and today and there is a lot to learn from you. But today I don't want to take you much time. So, moving to my last question of this session, ma'am, the question is message from your side to the students, those who want to become an astronaut in their life.
Sure. Yeah. One other thing I want to say, because it blends into this answer for this question as well. You have to be mentally strong as well. Okay, you cannot give up if some things don't work out. You cannot get frustrated. You cannot give up. You have to be persistent. You have to be mentally strong. And that is one requirement also, because remember, when you're going to be in space, you're going to be in a really extreme and harsh environment, which is about to kill you. So if something goes wrong, you cannot panic. And you cannot say, oh, this is not going to work out, so I'm going to give up. No, you have to be mentally strong. You have to be really quick to come up with solutions, to challenge yourself as well. So while you're on earth, train yourself by challenging yourself. I do that a lot. On my birthdays, 2 of my birthdays so far, because I can't afford to do this every time. So I have actually given myself a gift of skydiving. I have skydived from 13,000 and 15,000 feet because I wanted to challenge myself. Can I handle that stress? How will I survive that? And I did good. So this is how I've challenged myself. I never grew up as a swimmer, right? In India, when I was growing up, swimming was not a really common thing. But when I came here and I decided to pursue this route, I knew I had to become comfortable with the water. So I learned swimming and I became a good swimmer. But even then, when it was time to go for my scuba training, and I had to go to the bottom of a 12-feet pool, it was a scary feeling for me. I had an air tank and I knew I was breathing through it. I had air, but somehow, for some reason, I discovered I had a fear, first ever fear in my life, that being at the bottom of the pool was scary feeling to me. What if this regulator comes out of my mouth and I drink up all the water and I drown? So it was a struggle on my first day to train for scuba because of that fear. But when I came home, I calmed myself down. I'm like, what's wrong with you? You've never been like this and you want to do this. So how are you going to become an astronaut if you can't get over this? So I calmed myself down. I told myself the fear is all in my head. I just need to get over it. So once you train yourself, you can overcome that challenge. And that's what happened. Next day I went back and I was able to finish my training successfully because I've gotten over that fear. So challenge yourself. Yes, as a message, astronaut is a really tough dream to dream. Look at me. I am already 46. I started this journey at a very late stage. I became a US citizen at 38. So I've had only 2 applications so far. The first application I did, I knew I was not prepared yet. I did not have as many things on my application as all other astronauts have. There are astronauts, even people who apply to the astronaut program are extremely qualified, very, very qualified people. They have multiple degrees, they have PhDs, they are from military backgrounds. So even this second time when I've applied, and I've done so many things since then, I feel this is my first really strong application. But I know, because we are a group of astronaut hopefuls who are connected, this selection process began in March when we all applied, and it's now it's October, and interviews are going to start next year. Because of COVID, everything got delayed. But we know who have been contacted, whose references have been contacted. So 12,000 people applied. Out of those, only 400 to 500 people make it to the highly qualified. Out of those, only 150 people are people whose references are contacted and then they're considered for interview. Then only 40 will be interviewed, and then only 10 or 12 or 14 will be selected. My references haven't been contacted. So
It's really great to
I
see.
was
Congratulations.
they haven't been contacted. So yeah, so it's sad. I was really sad for a couple of days, and I worked so hard, and now what should I do? And it was really disappointing because you put all your hopes in that goal, right? But then I told myself, hey, when I started this journey, I knew that I was already this old and I might not have a chance. But why did I start? Because I wanted to die with the satisfaction that I tried. I at least tried, right? And then enjoy this journey along the way. So then I told myself these all things, reminded myself why I started this. And so I became positive again. I started looking at what else I can do. I'm here at NASA. I'm happy in my job. So what I'm saying basically is this is a tough dream to achieve. You can look at me as an example, right? I have 3 master's degrees today, and I am a Scientist-Astronaut Candidate. I have done a lot of research missions for Project PoSSUM. I have been a commander for 2 analog missions. I am a student pilot. I am a scuba diver. And then I do a lot of other things like outreach, talking to students. But even then, I haven't made it to that far yet. I'm still going to come back. I'm still going to keep building a lot of skills. I'm going to apply again next time whenever NASA puts out the application. Even then, I know that I might not have a chance because of my age. But have I given up? No. So remember, this is a tough dream. You have to be prepared.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing all these thoughts. And I think there is a lot to learn from you. And ma'am, you made a very wonderful point that I like the most is that you have to challenge yourself and always be strong to face all the challenges. Ma'am, thank you so much for joining. And I think it was really a very healthy discussion with you over the topic. We look forward to conduct more session with you in future if possible. Ma'am, thank you so much for joining.
Sure, yeah. Thank you for having me. And it was a pleasure interacting with you. I look forward to talking to you again. Thank you.
Same
and
here,
wish you
ma'am.
all a happy Navratri and a happy Dashera in advance.
Same to you, ma'am, from the
Thank
channel
you.
of Freak Folks. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Bye.
Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe.